I felt lost. I didn't have a purpose in life. I really felt I was kind of drifting. I had a job just working on back end code for like 5 years. I just go and sit in this cubicle every day, and it feels like I'm not making any real impact on the world. I just didn't feel like that was who I was supposed to be.
Who are you?
My name's Dave. Actualized Visuals is my project. My main clients are Zingara, Daily Bread, and Clozee. When I started going to music festivals, I realized that they're just using software, but they're using it in a way that is changing people's lives. I downloaded some software, started messing around. There's no other VJs in the entire state probably at that time. For a long time, I had a lot of mental blockage, and I felt like I could never catch up just because there's so many people who are so good at it. We announced the show initially with just me and secret lineup, and then we added the support VJs, and I made a whole 3D render of the stage with lasers and made a little reel that showed kind of what the show is going to be like. We ended up selling it out before doors. You can change your life whenever you want, and it might not be easy, but if you persevere, you can make your life into whatever you want it to be.
Who are you?
Who am I? My name's Dave. Actualized Visuals is my project. I work in the electronic music scene, doing visuals for a couple different artists. My main clients are Zingara, Daily Bread, and Clozee. But I work with a variety of other people too. I make content, I VJ, and I love it. That's great.
Yeah. And how did you get into this? Because I mean, for me, as somebody who's been to so many raves and festivals, and I think especially now in our current age, like the visual component of these shows is as important, I would almost say, as the actual like music almost. And like, I can't even go to, I feel like, normal shows anymore because it's like I don't want to watch some small dude in a really far distance playing a guitar. It's like the whole visual experience is such an immersive thing at these events. Like, how did you get into all of this?
So I felt the same way that you do when I first went to an event that had big visuals like that. And I was like, wow, this is insane. You know, I didn't even realize that things like that were happening. My first show was back in like 2016, 2017. And my first festival specifically was Mysteryland, which there wasn't actually a huge visual component to Mysteryland. Like the LED wall was pretty small. But that was definitely what like made me fall in love with the scene and the music, and then led me to lots of other events where I fell in love with the visuals. And so essentially I kind of just went to shows and festivals for years and years and saw a lot of visuals and had my mind blown, you know, many times by visuals and the pairing with the music and the way that it all worked together. And I basically decided that I wanted to know how it was happening. And I just kind of did some research and downloaded some software and started playing around, and one thing led to another, and here we are, you know?
Yeah. Was there a festival in particular that really, I heard you say in another interview that you wanted to basically give back to the community. And I'm curious for you, was there a particular festival where you experienced something like very significant that really led to that drive to want to give something back?
Not like a specific event that I can think of, but really just the whole experience of the, you know, music festival community. I kind of like came in as somebody who like, you know, I had some friends in my local community, but I hadn't met a lot of people that I could connect with deeply, you know, and I felt like going to these music festivals, I met other people who had similar outlooks on life, you know, and similar priorities. And it kind of just led me to, make a whole lot of friends. And for a while I had like a group of people, and we would go to like everything together. You know, we would, go to multiple festivals, shows almost every weekend in Boston. And, it was just a really powerful experience for me to find people like that who I could relate to and experience life with in a way that I'd never knew was possible, you know? And so for me, giving back to the community was just kind of like a way to keep it all going, like, and provide something of value and substance, that could also impact someone greatly. Like, there definitely were moments with visuals and music that impacted me really deeply.
Hmm.
And it's weird to say it, but a lot of it happened at Bass Nectar events,
Yeah.
the now defunct Bass Nectar. There was a lot of, he had moments in some of his shows that were just really introspective, and they had like, certain lyrics on the screen, or like samples from movies, just that really made you think. And
Mm.
that too was also hugely impactful to me. And, being able to be a part of creating those kind of experiences was a big factor too, where I, you know, could like positively influence someone without ever even meeting them, like
Yeah.
to be able to like just put good energy out, into the world, and help people who feel disconnected and lost, like I think, I found a lot of that in that community. And, it's unfortunate that it all went the way it did, but, it was a really powerful experience and time for me at a lot of those events specifically, and with the people who I used to go to those with, and other events. I, I learned a lot about myself and grew a lot as a person, and started to think about things in a different way. And, so being able to kind of like pay that forward, and see if I could contribute, especially now that that's all gone, like, and if there's a way that kind of like the good part, there, where if to be able to carry that, forward, and be able to integrate it into what I do, and especially the artists that I work with, I try to work with artists who have positive intentions, especially after that experience. It's very important to me, like, who I work with, who they are as a person.
Mm.
Um, I never knew Bass Nectar. I never worked with them. That was really like before I got into all this. But it was definitely really tough for that all to happen, because it was so influential to me and such a big part of my life. It really, like, it was a good thing, I think, in the end, because there was a lot of like unhealthy idolization happening, which is, something that kind of takes place in the music industry now and then. And I think that through that, it helped me to kind of realize that, like, these are just people, like, they're not all good, and like, and then subsequent things about other artists coming out, and, that whole wave of cancellations, essentially, which also was a great thing. I'm glad all that came to light, and like, and now it's like, I feel like the the electronic music industry people are much more cognizant of that.
Mm.
And, so anyways, I'm kind of going all over the place here.
You're good. Yeah, no, you're good. I'm curious for you. Like you talked about how, whether it was Bass Nectar or just like the rave scene as a whole, like you kind of came into it at a place where it sounds like you didn't really find people that you were connecting with. And I know that's true for myself and so many people who come into, the rave scene. Is I don't know if it's a saying, but I almost want to make it one that's like, you come for the music, but you stay for the community. It's like the people are such a huge part of what we end up wanting to come back for. And it sounds like that was what made such a huge impact in your own way, as well as like connected to the visuals. And I'm curious, just for, I guess, for us, the audience who didn't know you at that point and don't necessarily know you super deeply now, like, who were you at the beginning of that journey? And then who, I guess, were you by the time you were like, I want to start doing this professionally?
Wow, that's a really good question. So I guess yeah, you're good at it. So in the beginning, I guess I felt lost, like I felt like I didn't have a purpose in life, like I really felt like I was kind of drifting, like I went to school for software engineering. I originally I wanted to make video games. And so I went to school to make video games. And then I kind of realized that it was just like not really what I wanted to do. So I kind of slipped back into just general software engineering. And then I had a job just working on back end code for like database systems for like 5 years. And it was just like, it didn't feel like I was doing it something that had like a lot of like meaning, you know, like I was just kind of working in the minds of the software industry, you know, like keeping it all running so everybody can get their data, you know, and it just felt like it's so like, you know, I was making good money, you know, like I was comfortable, but it was just like, I just go and sit in this cubicle every day and it feels like I'm not making any real impact on the world, you know what I mean? And that kind of ate at me, you know, like, and it just didn't feel like, you know, it kind of affects like your confidence as a person. I feel like when like what you're doing in your life doesn't feel like it matters, you know, like how you're spending most of your time, if it's just to like make money, you know, so that you can do what you want. Like it, for me, I just didn't feel like that was who I was supposed to be. You know, I felt like there was more, like that I could find something that I love to do and that could make a positive impact, you know, in the world that so badly needed it then and needs it even more now, you know? And so I kind of just felt like whenever, like, for example, whenever anybody would ask me what I did, I'd be like, oh, I just like, you know, work on, I'm a software engineer, you know, like I wasn't excited about it. It never was something that I was excited about or that I felt mattered. And so when I started going to music festivals and I saw and felt the impact that a music and visual experience could have on someone, and I realized that they're just using software, you know, like to my brain as someone who like made software and just like played video games, I'm like, they're just using software, but they're using it in a way that is like changing people's lives, you know, and I'd never like really seen software used like that before, you know, like it like most of the time my experience with software was like, it's either a video game, which is cool and fun, but also not necessarily really meaningful. There are some that have some good stuff in there, but a lot of times it's kind of like just cool and fun, you know, like it's a good time, you know, like, but it's not like when you go to you know, a music event and an artist is talking about how it's affected their life and they have this song that they've like imbued all of their emotional experience into, and you can feel it, you know, like it's just different. And same with visuals too. Like you can put emotion into a visual and into a visual experience, and you can use, you know, synced text to really drive home a message that the artist is trying to send. And so yeah, I just thought that was so cool, and I wanted to be a part of it. And like I said, I downloaded some software, started messing around. There was kind of a local community that was growing too at the time, where I had the opportunity to just mess around, you know, and to play really small shows. And there's no bar for quality. They're just like, oh, you can do it. And I was like, yeah, I know how to use the software, kind of, you know, like I can turn on a kaleidoscope. Yes, sir. You know, like I didn't really like know much, but it was enough, you know, like I lived in New Hampshire, you know, there's no other VJs in the entire state probably at that time. There's maybe like a couple, but like, especially in 2016, 2017, like visuals were not like what they are now. Like it was still like a thing, but it wasn't like a huge part of every person's show. You know, like now, like every major artist has a touring VJ. They built out custom content. They're telling a story with it. You know, like it wasn't necessarily like so accessible or so like known as even something that you could do. You know, like when I started doing it, every time I try to tell somebody, nobody like knows what a VJ is. You know, like. You really have to be like, well, and even now, like I get in an Uber and they're like, so what are you in town for? I'm like, well, I run the video walls, you know, like, and that's kind of usually where I start. And then it's like, I could have that conversation infinitely, but it's like, it's just cool to like be part of something that, is so new, and so
Yeah.
different too. Like that's part of what like really drew me into it too, is I was like, I feel like this is like an untapped art form,
Yeah.
like at the time it really was. And now there's
Yeah.
more people, like it really is like more of a thing, and people are tapping into it pretty heavy, and people were then too, but Excision had already like started to do his crazy tours with all the visuals and everything, and Bass Nectar was doing his thing, and but I feel like now it's just grown so much, like
Yeah.
especially with Lost Lands. I feel like Lost Lands alone has like, because there's so much giant LED wall, every artist in the Excision sphere is like, I need to have sick visuals like Excision, like it's gotta be
Yeah.
sick. So
Well, I think it just brings it up a whole other level. And I want to say, like, you must have contributed to some of my favorite visuals, because probably some of my favorite visual stuff that I've seen has come from like the LSZ tour, like when they were doing stuff with Clozee and Ellis Dream and Zingara too. Like, she's one of my favorite artists. And so, like, I'm curious for you, it's like you get to work with all these different artists that you love and have made an impact. And like, you've talked a little bit about like, wanting to create a positive vibe and these impacts that they've had on you. And I guess when you're making these visuals and you're wanting to communicate this like story or this like feeling, like, I guess what goes into that process when you're actually like, because it's one thing to be like, okay, cool, this looks pretty, but to like evoke something, I think, in the way that so much of this stuff does, where you and I were just talking about Enzo, where I'm sitting and all of a sudden it's like 20 minutes later and I haven't looked away from this screen. Like, what are you actually doing that goes into that process?
So honestly, a lot of it comes from the artist, like, because like it's their show, like, so I am really just like helping them. And I try to like find artists who I align with, like that's why I love working with Zingara so much, because I just really align with like her purpose and her vision and the meaning behind everything she does, and so like I just help bring her ideas to life, like for example, like she had, if you saw that LSZ tour, you probably saw the High Stranger bit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm actually terrible about it. Oh, yes, I do know what
They're
you're
like,
talking
it
about.
comes on the screen, it's like High Stranger.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you tell me names though, I'm like so bad at song
Oh yeah,
names, so
no,
I'm like, I will
me
not
too.
remember. Okay, cool.
No worries. No, but like this moment, it was like a very like memorable
Yes,
moment
like
to say,
High
you know what I'm talking
Stranger.
about?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
it all
totally.
stops at
Yeah.
High Stranger with the text. So like that was something where it was like, that was one of the coolest things I've ever made, because when I was working with Gabrielle on it, she's just such a well-intentioned and awesome person to work with. She's like, maybe someday, like, she's like, I made this because like, I mean, she has a whole story of how it was like a message from her friend who had passed away, but like what really struck me was that it was, she was talking about it as if, she said she hoped that it could like maybe one day, like the intention behind it was really just like create a positive impact for people and help them get through hard things. And she was like, if this could like help someone to like not end their life, like that's what I'm going for here. Like I want to make such a positive impact on somebody that it's going to like turn around like that kind of soul crushing depression. And that was just like, I was like, well, I'm sold on working with you forever, because like that is the coolest thing I've ever heard, and I'm so down, and I'm gonna make this like, I immediately was, she was like, it's kind of like the universe is talking to you, and I was like, oh, I know exactly what to do, I was like, we're gonna do like the stars, and it's gonna be like, and the text will be like universe like inside the text, but it's like different from the stars, and so like and so we just kind of like went back and forth. We were like, yeah, that's gonna be sick. And then we kind of built it in so it had like a laser moment where it's like the whole time code was built to kind of hand it off back and forth. So on like certain hits, it would be like the visuals like hitting right on it, and then there'd leave some dark moments for the lasers to hit the next kind of set of things. And
Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was gonna say, how much are you interconnected with like the laser? Like, do you get involved with the actual, I guess, the lasers being involved in that, or like, because I know you do both VJing, you do the actual creation of the visuals, so like all these things have overlap. But like, where do you fit in, I guess, the most with that kind of stuff?
So with the Zingara, because there's no touring LD or laser guy right now. I mean, they had one for the Parallel Spirits tour.
Yeah.
But the last year, when I was touring with her before that, there was no like we didn't really have somebody for most of the shows. Once or twice for the big ones, we bring someone out, but most of the time it would just kind of be me directing the show. So like I'm doing the visuals, but I'm also like looking over at the laser guy and being like, all right, this is the one. I'm like, you're coming in on this next drop. I'm gonna black out, and this is gonna be you. So we're like communicating live during the set. And also like ahead of time, I try and go and be like, hey, I'm Dave. I'm with Zingara. We want to kind of start like this. We want to keep off like the artist wash. We don't like to light her up too much up there. Like, so I'm just like kind of passing along notes and directing the show and letting them know when to come in and out, when colors are going to change, like those kind of things. So I'm not like pushing any buttons on any of that stuff, but I'm like, I know when it's supposed to happen and the colors that it's supposed to be, like in terms of like the rest of it, like that's, I haven't dug into that side of production yet. I don't really plan on it. I kind of like to prefer to stay on the visual side, but yeah, that's kind of like how I interact with it. And on Daily Bread and Clozee, we do have a touring LD and laser guy. So now like for Daily Bread, we're building out time code together, where it's like, there's a time coded video and then he builds time coded lasers like around it, so when a certain track triggers time code, do you know what time code is?
You can totally explain it for the audience, but my understanding of it is time coding is just like matching it with basically the DJ's, whatever the DJ is going to be playing, right? So it's like it's going to match the same, in the same way that they're doing the, I'm going to switch this track or switch this track here. Like they're going to switch this track, so I'm going to match it with this visual or laser component or whatever.
Right. And it's like for time code, it's like totally pre-built. So it's like you create a whole custom visual and laser experience for a song that automatically triggers when they play that song. And it stays in sync the whole time. So like that gives you the opportunity to really like, for example, the High Stranger thing, because it's text, it needs to be in sync perfectly with it. So you can like hook a computer up to the CDJs and have it like feed that information back and like kind of control the visuals in that way. So that's how you build like a really intentional sequence, because you can like really like plan it out like that. And in that way, it is kind of like a little movie that you built to the track. It's like a music video. But you can also do it with lasers. So you can be like, the video is going to be like here, but in this part in the time coded video, it's just going to like turn off the screen because like the lasers are going to come through, and then it'll come back and then no video, and then here's the lasers, so I'm kind of thinking about all that as I'm creating the time coded videos. I'm like, are we going to do lasers here? How are the lasers going to tie in? How are the lights going to look?
Well, and I'm sure you have like through just so much experience at this point, you can kind of visualize that in your head, but I'm also like imagining like, how do you actually like test that or know what that's going to look like? Because every arena is a little bit different. If you're outside at Red Rocks or at the Gorge, like they're both outdoor arenas, but they're very different with the amount of space that they have available. Like all that's going to shift and change. So like, how do you actually prepare for the complexity of that unknown? Like, do you use a software to kind of say, hey, this is kind of what we think it's going to look like, and then go for your best, or you get a chance to actually test it? Or like, what's that process like?
So on the video side, the videos are pretty much just like built to be like 16:9, like regular TV ratio, and then we go to a festival and it's like a billion different little screens and like, all this stuff. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know, this is going to work. But there's software that works along with Resolume. So Resolume is like the VJ software that we use. It's like the industry standard. And there's software that goes with it that allows you to easily map a stage like that. So you can like lay out slices that like look like the stage physically. And then you can go and select like how the content's going to be distributed. And so like, for example, sometimes if we have like a time coded video that has lyrics in it, we just play it on the center screen until it turns into a visual part, which works really well because for Zingara anyways, a lot of those are really kind of chiller moments. So we'll just start it on the center screen and then bring it out to the other ones once it turns into like the tunnel or, the intense part of the visual element. And so for that, we kind of just like, we build the video, we're like, this looks good. And then on the fly, I just like, for each event, I go in and I have to spend some time sitting in the software and be like, all right, how are we going to like lay this out on here? And it's the same thing for lighting and lasers, really. Like if they're building like a time coded laser element, they're kind of just like building it from like a couple of lasers, like, so maybe it's like they're building it on like 4 lasers, and the laser guys have previs software. And laser and lighting guys have this previs software where like you can have like a 3D render of a stage and control it in real time, kind of like a video game.
Wow.
And so they can build these segments and they can play them in there, and then they can see it actually like happening in 3D. But then it's like the same thing. You go to an arena and now you have like 30 lasers. But
Right.
my
Or
understanding,
Thunderdome and you have like 1,000 lasers.
yeah, I don't even know. Honestly, like I'm just speculating at this point because like I don't really know what goes into it. But my understanding is that you essentially just take it. It's like, all right, we have these 4 lasers that are programmed. We're going to copy that to these ones and copy that to these ones. And it's going to be like, all right, like.
Yeah.
But if you're doing Thunderdome, they're probably just programming with 1,000 lasers and they're making it all custom for that rig. Like once you get to a certain point and you're throwing major events, you can like build it all to the rig. And, like for Thunderdome, I'm sure they have the full previs, so they have like a 3D render of that stage with all the lasers, all the lights, all the video. They can like spend days in the studio practicing and perfecting the show. And it's almost all time coded, like for Excision, especially like almost all of the visual component is time coded. So that's how they get the lasers to shoot, like perfectly with
Totally.
like,
Right.
so it's like the video pretty much runs itself, for Excision. It's just those, the lasers probably take some programming at Thunderdome for sure.
For sure. I'm curious for you, like you have these kind of like different elements where you're either you're creating the visuals from the ground up with the artist, or you're live and you're VJing with them, or you're actually like kind of directing the whole smorgasbord of it all. Is there one of these 3 that you find that you love doing the most?
I love VJing the most for sure. Like content creation is something that I got into a little later on, and from the beginning I was always kind of messing around trying to make stuff, but like for a long time I couldn't make anything that like I would want to play, kind of like when you're a DJ starting out, you're like, yeah, here's my songs and here's the songs that I play, it's like I'm not ready to show anybody any of this. I'll give it like 5 years. So like that was kind of me for a while. It's like I didn't like to play my own stuff that much, like I kind of like a lot of stuff that I play, like for these artists, like, there's a lot, sometimes we work a lot of stock content in there and to just fill the gaps and also like find stuff that like matches a specific vibe. Sometimes you don't need to build something from scratch. Like it's already been made and you can get it and it has the perfect vibe and feeling for what you're trying to do. So like it, and saves a ton of money for the artist and it works perfectly. So like for a lot of shows I do that, especially with smaller artists. They come in and they have like a pack that has like 5 clips in it, and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to add some stuff so we can kind of fill this out. And so at this point I have a library that's like 10 terabytes of just like visual content that I've purchased or made or found or whatever. And so I kind of like find the stuff I like the most and I just collect it all. And then like for me, my favorite part is, and what I think I'm best at, is like building the show from the assets. I've gotten much better at the 3D content creation, and I do really enjoy it, especially when I get to work with a team. Like for the bigger content projects that I do, I hire other people to do certain elements of them, who are more geared towards like 3D, like that's what they do primarily. Like for me, I kind of started as a VJ and then I got more into it. And I think that I have a valuable perspective when it comes to it because like not everything is going to look good on an LED wall. Even if it's like an amazing piece of 3D work, like it needs to translate to a VJ show. Like it needs to like work on an LED wall. So things that have like depth and things that, have a lot of contrast and like, so having that perspective like really helps for directing the projects. And then I find guys who are just like crazy. I have a couple guys who I love to work with. Architect is one of my favorites. He's helped me out with a lot of major content projects I've done. He did a couple of the pieces for did you see the Zingara Level Up tour at all?
Yeah. I was there in Seattle for both nights.
Okay, cool. Hell yeah. So he made the Magic Garden time code. He made
Oh,
like the
cool.
clips for that. I ended up putting we collaborated on it. He did the
Sure.
renders and I kind of put it all together into the music video, which is how we do a lot of our stuff. Because he can make a 3D render that like looks real, which is crazy. Like I can't make it look real, like I can make stuff
Yeah.
that looks cool and stylized and
Yeah.
works for VJ content, but like when it comes to something like making a garden, I'm always like, all right, John, I need your help on this one. Like I can't do this. So
You know
so
the abstract stuff, but
yeah,
the
exactly.
realistic.
Like, yeah, once it comes
Yeah.
to like something like where you gotta like dial in render settings and reflections and lighting and all that, I'm like, dude, I don't even like it takes years to figure out like how to use all those tiny little settings. So
Right.
on the really big projects, I lean heavily on John to help me with all that. And
Cool.
for smaller projects, like I'll kind of figure it out usually.
Hmm.
And but VJing is definitely like what it's all about for me. Like when I'm creating content, I'm just creating a puzzle piece that's going to go into a show,
Yeah.
because like the show is the end product, like I like to create the show because that's the part that's like impactful and meaningful,
Right.
I mean, the content is too, obviously it's a part of it, but building it all together in the way that it weaves through and, which comes back to the content too. It's hard to say which I like more. I do really like enjoy making the content, and especially when it's with an artist like Zingara, because she has like a very clear vision of like what she wants and what she likes. And so it's really easy to kind of like go back and forth and build ideas. And, some artists are a little more difficult. It's like they don't really know what they want. So you kind of have to go back and forth and pitch some things and kind of like figure that out together, which is a little more like, it's just more time consuming and difficult and less enjoyable generally than when somebody comes in, they're like, I want exactly this. And you're like, all right, sick. And then you're like, well, maybe we got to do it like this because it'd be a little too expensive like that. But the idea is sick and we're going to make it work,
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons of both. VJing can be stressful. Content creation can be tedious. So, but they're both super, super fun, and I love doing it all. I really enjoy every piece of the process.
Nice. What's it like for you when you're in those live moments? And I mean, it sounds like a lot of the things you do are around the time coded stuff, and I'm sure that there's probably also moments where you're kind of like DJ is like deciding to kind of go freestyle in that moment. Like, what's it like? Can you take us behind the scenes, sort of like while you're at the booth and you're, I guess, in that relationship with the artist on stage in that way?
Yeah. So so a lot of the stuff that like we do a lot of time code, but it's not even half the show probably. There's like there's maybe like 30% of the show for some of these shows. And the rest of it is still planned out, but we just like pick out the content that's going to match. And then I just run it live. And running it in live gives you a lot of flexibility. It's cool because it's not necessarily the same every single time. You can kind of do it differently. And what it looks like for me is like I have layers of video. And on top of that, I have layers of effects. And so if you kind of think about it, like if you've ever used Photoshop or anything like that, I've got the opacity of my layers, different layers on a fader, like on a MIDI controller. So I can like chop them in and out. I can chop between them. I also have like a control that can like speed them up and slow them down, or like play them like in reverse, or there's like effects that can like mask one into another one, or like, put a edge detect on it so it looks like super digital and like, outlined out. And once you dig into Resolum, there's like an infinite number of effects, and you can create all your own controls. It's really like a sandbox. Like there's no like template. It's just like, here's everything. And you have to kind of like, you got to be like, look at every effect and look at every parameter and kind of figure out what it does. And then like, you can stack them and create your own like custom like stacks of effects that you feel work together well. And so a lot of it's done in advance, where I just create different effects but then I have a button where I can like press it, and now the image looks different, or you know, it's now it's flashing, or it's like, you know, kind of like shaking a little bit with the bass, you know, like I have all those kind of little buttons that, so I'm listening to the music and I'm like, all right, here comes the drop. I'm like building up to the drop, and then blackout, and then, okay, back, and here it comes, you know, and like, so that's kind of like what it looks like. I'm just like, all right, and what's coming next? All right, this one's coming next. So I got to queue up the clips for that one. All right, here it comes, and then fade it in. All right. And then, okay, so we're chilling for a little bit. All right, and here comes the drop, and then we build it up. And then on the drops, it's like speed ramping it, and like speeding it up and slowing it down, chopping it in, switching between different clips, you know, hitting different effects to kind of like make it more intense, you know, and so it's really fun, you know, like it can be stressful, but once you like really get the hang of it, it's just so much fun. And that's what I love the most, you know, like that in the moment, just like listening to the music, and it's like you get to the point where it feels like you're playing an instrument, you know, like if you build your controls properly, you know, you can make it so like it feels like you're playing along, like you're part of the band, you know, like so like that's kind of like what I love, you know, like if I had to say like my favorite thing about all of this, I just love being in the moment, and especially when it like looks really good, you know, like and I didn't plan it, you know, and I'm just like, oh, sick, like that was dope, you know, like I didn't know it was gonna go like that, but that looks awesome, you know, like that kind of like live experimentation, you know.
Is there like a moment for you that comes up around that where you were like, you were just really in the moment and you were like, you just tried that like random thing that you're like, oh my gosh, that was so fucking cool that worked?
Oh man, I mean, it happens all the time. It's like I kind of got like, but I mean, now it's like most things are pretty planned out. Like I said, like even the ones where it's not time code, like I kind of know it's coming, and but every show I'm kind of like improving on it. I'm practicing playing each song live, so it kind of like gets better and better over time. And then every now and then I do a set where it's just like, we got absolutely no plan here. Here's the content we're running in, and I'm just gonna do it. And you know, and those sets can be really fun because like, you know, with a pre-planned set, everything looks great and hits perfect the whole time, and you know it's going to because you made it that way. You know, like, but like with the set where you're kind of freestyling it, like there's some points where it might be like, I don't know if that like totally matches the music right now. But then there's some points where you're like, oh yeah, that's perfect. And I didn't even plan it at all. You know, like you hit the clip and you're like, that is 100% the vibe of this drop or this song.
That's awesome.
You know, like when you really nail it and you just kind of like that's when it feels awesome. And that's happened like it happens all the time with the busk sets, you know, but, and busking is like freestyling. That's what they call it in production world.
Cool. Busking. That's good.
Busking.
I'll remember that term.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like the opposite where you've like made a mistake or you were like, that really didn't work, and or you took that and found a way to make it work or something?
Oh yeah, that happens all the time too. But like it's most of the time people don't notice it. You know, like the mistakes that I make are so like I catch it real quick. You know, like for example, like sometimes I might like there's a clip from the previous track that like I accidentally bring in. I'm like, oh shit. Then I like, pull it back and switch it, and I'm like, all right, nobody saw that. You know, like there's little things like that where it's like, you know, to the crowd, they might not even know that like maybe I did that on purpose, you know, like that. And that's kind of like it's the same thing. In high school, I did a lot of acting, and I was in like you know, plays and musicals and stuff, and it's the same thing. Yeah, hell yeah. Oh yeah, you went to the acting school. That's really cool. Yeah. You said so. So it's the same thing where it's like you forget your lines. As long as you say something that works, like nobody knows you forgot your lines, you know, like they're like, as far as they know, that's what it was supposed to happen, you know? So like, that's kind of how I think of it is I'm like, well, I kind of messed that up, but I bet you that nobody knows that I messed that up. Cause at the end of every set I talk to people and I'm like, yeah, I screwed up that one part. And they're like, what are you even talking about? Like, we have no idea. So I'm like, okay, I've come to the point where I've like realized that unless it's really bad, which sometimes that does happen, and I really, really try to avoid it when it's really bad. A lot of the time it's because of like technical issues when it's really bad, you know, like if like Resolume crashes or if like the time code line stops communicating with the CDJs, you know, like there are some things that are just completely out of my control. And that's when it really is like, you're like, oh man, like that was pretty noticeable, but like most of the time it wasn't my fault, although sometimes it still lands on me, like, yeah. So sometimes there's things like that. But the goal is to have less of those moments and more of the other kind of moments, as time goes on. I think that, I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. So I think that like I have very few moments where things go wrong. I wouldn't say I almost ever play like a perfect set, like it's hard to like not make like a single mistake and have everything be perfect. I've had a couple of sets where I felt that way, but like most sets, there's like something where you're like, dang, I wish I did that part like a little different, like just like, I probably would have been cooler if I just did this instead of that. And, like, but it's not like the audience is like this. So it was all so sick, like they're not like nitpicking the individual tiny moments of the show. Like they're just like looking at it as an overall experience. And so, I got to remind myself of that or I'll go crazy. Cause like, every now, like, and I know VJs who have done that, they just beat themselves up all the time. And it's like, you got to just realize like, it happens, like sometimes things happen, sometimes out of your control, sometimes it's your fault. And, like it's all about just working to be better every time, like figure out if you made a mistake, why did that happen? And how do you make it not happen again? Like for example, I recently like kind of added a whole entire new MIDI controller to my setup. So that like, because I was having an issue where like when you go to the next track and the next look, I have to like click multiple things on the screen, like it wasn't like synced to a button so I could just switch it all over. It was like I have to click all this stuff and then fade it up. And so I got another MIDI controller that's literally just like in sequence. You push the buttons and it's the clips for each track. So it's like now when it switches to the next track, I just hit the next button and then it's like loads up everything. Cause like sometimes you need to trigger like 6 different things, like because there's a lot going on in Resolume. Sometimes like for the more complicated stages, you have a layer that's dedicated to just like doing colored outlines on the panels. Sometimes you have like a camera that you want to pull up as well as like a clip for the background and then maybe like a color effect too. So like sometimes you're like trying to trigger like 5 different things for the next track and you only have like a second, like, and you're like, come on, so like, and honestly, I should have done this way sooner, but it was kind of one of those things where, I saw another VJ do it, Matt, who's Zip Visuals, he does LSZ. So I just do the Clozee specific stuff. He's LS Dreams VJ too. So it's like, he does all that side of the thing. He is really, really good. And he was doing that on the whole LSC tour. And I kind of like stored it in my memory bank. I was like, that's a good trick. And I'm probably going to steal it one day. Cause like, it's tough, like trying to click all this stuff. It's a great idea. I stole it. Sorry, Matt. I love you.
That's all artists steal, right? That's the saying.
Yeah. I was inspired. I was inspired by how he did it. And I probably do it a little differently. Yeah. And it's all builds upon each other. So.
Is there a like a favorite moment where like the crowd for you just went like absolutely wild at a pair of visuals, or like a VJ moment that you had where it was just like they were just like where you were kind of blown away by even yourself having kind of being in that space?
Yes, and it's gonna sound silly, but so last year for Red Rocks, when I played with Zingara at Red Rocks in support for this, it was Grammatic was the headliner, and she had this part in her set last year. I don't think she had it on this tour, but the It's a Rock bit with SpongeBob. And for Red Rocks, that part always hits. And it was always really fun. Even though I'm not like VJing, it's just kind of like something that we made in advance. The crowd loves it. They love it so much. It goes crazy. And honestly, a lot of my personal visuals are also kind of like, I love doing like the pop culture references and stuff. Like I have a lot of like visuals of like Bender from Futurama and like Jake the dog and shit like that, I just love all that stuff. And I think the crowd loves it too. And so, but for the Red Rock show, we took that clip and we edited it so instead of being like the boulder from SpongeBob, it was red rocks. And so like SpongeBob was like, it's not a boulder, it's a rock. And then he like hugged red rocks, and it was just so funny. The crowd went crazy. Everybody in front of house kind of like trying to turn around and looked at me and like gave me the nod. And it was like, he was just so funny. And that was one of the like, I mean, it's not like a super impactful moment that's going to change people's lives necessarily, but it's just fun, you know. I like to have fun too. People need to have fun, you know.
I agree. I think like having, like even with what you're doing with all of this stuff, right? You're doing it in a lot of ways because it's fun, like, right? Being able to create these visuals, doing all those things. And like, I think even me, when you and I were talking about earlier, I went to like, 54 shows in a year. And a lot of that was like the pursuit for fun because it was fun. And like that, I think, leads to so much growth a lot of times when we're like actually just pursuing the thing that brings us joy in whatever way that looks.
Definitely. I think that's really where you can like, I mean, that's where you are the most yourself. I feel like when you are like enjoying yourself and you're having fun with your friends. And I think that when you spend time being your authentic self, it pays dividends, you know, like it teaches you who you are and what you love and what you want to do. And I think, it's such a powerful experience, and goes back to kind of what we were talking about earlier about like what we try to do with these spaces is, you know, like just create a fun, happy space where you can not worry about all the stresses of your life for a little while and just like enjoy yourself and be with your friends and focus on like relationships and, you know, like things like that. And we just need spaces like that because the real world is tough out there. You know, late stage capitalism isn't fun for anybody. Tough.
It's a little bit fun for you, I guess.
It's a little bit fun for me. But still, you know, like I got to pay the bills, you know.
No,
but like I do love it, but and it's the capitalism part is not fun, you know, paying bills and paying rent and buying groceries and all that, you know. It's like
No, I feel you. I mean, I'm curious about that for you. Like you talked about the fact that you've been doing this for 10 years. I'm curious about like when you look back at, not that you won't have even more up ahead of you, but like have you ever taken the time to really think about like all of the stuff that you've contributed to at this point and like the impact that that's had, and like thinking about even yourself, you know, being somebody and like those other people in the crowd, myself included, who've been impacted by your work? Have you ever really just like sat with that at all?
It's hard to find the time, honestly. It's like you go from one thing to the next. Like, I feel like a lot of these sets where you make an impact, you don't even have time to process it before you're like off to the next gig or working on the next thing. You know, it's like I kind of feel like there are times when I try to sit there and process it, but like I'm here on the day to day, just like trying to take care of my family and get my job done. You know, like for me, I'm just like, I don't think about it as much now because it's just like on to the next thing. And it's the same with the music artists too. It's like they put on all these amazing events and they don't like, none of us have the time to like sit there and be like, wow, we really did something there. Usually, you know, most of the time we're just like, that was cool. All right, what's next? Oh, we got to go to the airport. All right, everybody get in the van. Like, here we go. You know, like, because we're at work, you know, like for everybody else, it's like this like thing that's like so awesome and like, you know, like so cool. But like we do this like every weekend and it doesn't feel, it kind of loses some of the magic when you do it as a job, you know, and you forget the impact that it has sometimes, you know, like I'm just trying to get in there and do my job and pay my bills and take care of my family, you know, like that's what I'm usually thinking about. When the show looks awesome, I'm like, that looks great. I'm stoked that it looks awesome, but I'm not like thinking about like as much like, I wonder how somebody in the crowd took it. Although that moment that I was talking about, the High Stranger thing that I did with Zingara that last tour, especially because it was time coded, I'm just standing there kind of looking around at everybody. I'm like, wow, this is actually like really cool right now. You know, like we're actually like we're doing something cool right now, and I really like it. And so, all those time coded moments are a good opportunity for that, to just like take a step back and watch the show and look at the people around you and be like, wow, everybody's having a great time. And it's cool. You know, like we're doing it. Like, but yeah, a lot of the times it just goes right over your head. You're like, all right, here we go. What's next? Like, or I'm like waking up in the morning. I'm like, all right, time to take Dante to the library for baby story time. It's like, I live in like two very different worlds, right now. So, so my responsibilities are like, they take up most of my brain space.
Yeah,
I wish I could spend more time contemplating the impact, but I'm just like, all right, here we go.
You talked about that, kind of obviously when it's your own show. I'm curious, like, do you get the chance to still slip into a show like just as an audience member? And like, I'm curious what that's like for you now. Is your brain still kind of constantly thinking as a VJ with like everything that's going on, or do you get to be able to just kind of slip into the moments of it all, or what's that like for you?
Not really. It's kind of like, it's weird to be in the crowd for me now. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I'm like, where's my computer? I don't know. What am I doing here? It's, there are moments like, when I'm with the family, especially like when, like I said, we bring Dante out to certain shows and stuff, and we all get to be together. And I try to be in the moment and not analyze the visuals. But when there's a visual component, it's really hard for me to not be like looking at it and being like, because this is part of like what I feel like it's analyzing people's shows and thinking about what you do like and what you don't like is like a really important part of getting good at DJing. So for years and years and years, yeah, it's like, yeah, building your taste and kind of like just like figuring out like what you think looks best on a screen, like what you think works really well. And so I'm always kind of like taking notes. Like anytime I see another VJ perform, I'm taking notes that are either positive or I'm like, oh, I'm never going to do that. Like that looks really, really good. I'm going to do that. Or it's like, ooh, no, I'm not going to do that one. I don't like that,
Yeah.
So, but either way, it's like you're learning from it, but it does make it hard to just like be there and like watch the show and like absorb it in the way that it was intended to be felt. Like once you kind of understand what's going on behind the scenes, and it's the same with making music too. Like as far as I'm aware, like it's hard to kind of like go and watch or listen to somebody's set without kind of like thinking about it. Because it triggers, yeah. It's like when your whole brain is thinking about visual stuff all the time, and you go and you see visuals, it's like, I can't just like be like, this is fun and cool. I'm like, oh, look at those visuals. Oh, I see what they're doing there. Oh, that's a good trick. Oh, yeah, I might try that one. Or what if I did it like that? Like I'm always kind of like that. So I love it when there's like a late night set with no visuals. I get to go to, and then when there's no visuals and just lights and lasers, that's kind of like the best for me. Of course, I don't advocate those spaces as a VJ, but they are fun for me.
At once your favorite space and your least favorite space at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, where's the VJ? But also like, I can just kind of enjoy this now. So I'm on both sides of it for sure.
That's super funny. Where do you think this is all going? Like, do you think we're heading towards like a different innovation with like the use of AI or like these different technologies that are continuing to develop? Do you see something where we go into some sort of, I mean, we have things like the Tacoma Dome or Thunderdome, where it's obviously massive performance, but like, do you see this getting to a point where it's like immersion, like on a deeper level than it's even at now?
I mean, the best example of that right now would be the Sphere, probably, and spaces like that, where it's essentially virtual reality, like the screen is all encompassing. It's all you can see. So like they can put you inside a space, like, and it feels like you're there. I don't know if you've been to the Sphere yet. You should go. It's sick. So sick. I went to see the Unity show, which was amazing. There was like an orchestra and like a whole 2-hour like live synced experience with classic EDM tracks, and like it was so cool. And there was a lot of that. They like put you inside a space, and like they can like there's one part where you're like floating through the sky, and there's hot air balloons kind of around you, and they're like they're passing you, and it really feels like you're floating through the sky. And then the camera kind of turns down and you see a castle, and then you like zoom into the castle really fast on the drop, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa! It kind of feels like you're falling because it's like everything, like the way the sphere's set up is the seats are like almost like they're very steep, and like you almost feel like you're gonna fall off of the seats like when you're up in the balcony. Like it's a little scary, but they do that so that the wall, the LED screen, can like encompass fully around you. So it's like almost a full 180 degree where you can't see, or like your eyes aren't focused on anything else. Like, so that's the most immersive thing that I've seen. And I don't necessarily think that's like, something that's going to take over the industry, like it's still like a very like special experience. You need to have like, you can't just like tour with that, like, so like, I don't really see like any major changes to the way things are done in terms of a live show. I mean, like there's always like creative elements that you can introduce, like there's new lighting fixtures that can do cool things. And like, sometimes there's like LED walls. There's some people who do like the LED wall thing where there's like a transparent LED wall and then another LED wall on the back, and you can make like holograms and like illusions and stuff like that. So like there's fun tricks. There's always like things you can do, but like the standard setup of just like lights, lasers, LED wall, I don't necessarily see changing majorly. And as far as AI, I am scared of it a little bit. I see the potential to be used for this purpose, but that also like it would take a lot of jobs from a lot of hardworking artists who have like worked their whole lives to get where they are. And I think that, with AI, you can do a lot of really cool stuff. And like, I'm not like fully against it. I don't want to see it become the primary way that people are making visuals. Like I think having it in a couple shows here and there is cool. Like, and especially depending on how it's being used, there's like a whole range of how AI can be used. There's people who are making AI slop, as you can call it, as it's referred to. And essentially it's just like lazy AI, like where they're like, they just type a prompt and make a video and they're done, or type a prompt, make a song and they're done. And then there's people who have much more intricate workflows where they're like for example, Super Task's new show, like Super Task is doing this whole tour with this show that he built. And I actually helped him out on the Mission Ballroom stop with, he had it all time coded himself, but we helped him just to like provide like a failover and like, like, and just make sure that it was all going to integrate with the system at the Mission Ballroom properly and everything like that. So, so I got to see his process, and he's using like 7 different platforms and like node-based workflows, and like he'll create a reference image and then modify the reference image and then like create keyframes. He'll take like a scene and then like feed it into an AI that can give you like multiple like views of the same room that you can use as keyframes to animate between. Like there are some really cool things that are being done with it if you're using it properly. But I feel like a lot of the way that it's being used right now is not that. And, and there's been a lot of pushback from the community on it too, I think.
Yeah.
Like which is another reason why I don't see it being the primary form anytime soon, because people, when it comes to art, especially, people still want art that's like made by people,
Right. Totally.
for the most part. Like, I don't think people want to see AI visuals. They want to see things that were like intentionally crafted down to every minute detail, like where AI is just like, a lot of it's like, nobody came up with that. It's just like, they came up with the general concept, but nobody said that this was going to be there or that's going to be there or whatever. And like, so it's not as intentional, like by design. It's just not.
Yeah.
So
like what you talked about it too, where it's like there's a difference between just being like, hey, make me these visuals. Okay, cool. I'm going to use this thing. And like be like, I think I saw somebody recently in some interview talking about like, I think with, who was it? I don't remember, but it was some DJ talking about like they were using it for like conceptual work. So they were using it for like oh, this is like an idea. Okay, cool. This gives me an idea for this. Then
Yes.
taking that concept and starting to use it in different ways, right? Or like what you said also with the visuals of being like, it's almost like there's, to your point, just like the prompt generated stuff, but then there's also like AI as a tool where it's like, okay, well, this lets me, maybe I made this image already, but like it would be take 10 times the amount of work to look at it horizontally, right? But now I can use this thing that lets me understand what that would look like visually from
Right.
this side, and then I can manually tweak the things. And so it's like you can use these deeper, more advanced tools, just like software, right? It's like you don't have
Yes.
to like paint the visual by hand now and then upload it and then Photoshop. It's like
Right.
you already have a rendering software that can do that
Right.
already. So it's like finding those more advanced ways rather than, like you said, just like offshoring the creative process. Because I think to your point, even if AI makes music that sounds good, like we want to go see an artist and hear what they have to say, right? We want to
Right.
hear like what's their story. Like you talked about Zingara, and it's like you get the same random messages, but the important part is like she chose that to be there with those particular words to give that particular meaning to us because of who she is and the things that she's been through in her life. And when you
Right.
separate the artist, like we lose all of that. So it's a huge component to
Right.
have it.
Exactly. It kind of makes it meaningless,
Yeah.
if it's entirely crafted by AI and there's no like human influence at all. So I think, I do think it can be used in ways to create intentional experiences, but we're not quite there yet. I feel
Yeah.
like with the tools, and I feel like most of it is still just like not being, it's just lazy, you know. So the people who are doing it, who are really diving in and creating like custom workflows and like node based systems and all this stuff, like that is work, and like
Yeah.
they're creating something unique with it, and I consider that to be art. Like I feel
Mhm.
like if the amount of effort that goes into it as much as it would be to do it another way, like at what point, like I feel like it
Totally.
still can be, although I understand the argument that it's like being trained off of other people's art, and there's a whole lot of tricky stuff there too.
Right.
So I don't know. I
Yeah.
I am like with AI. I'm like, I hope it doesn't take all our jobs.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. It's kind of cool, but it's also kind of scary. I've definitely
100%.
used it. We kind of moved away from it now. We actually had a lot of AI content for Zingara,
Huh.
and this year with the Parallel Spirits tour, we got rid of all of it because
Huh.
um, she just had some conversations with her community where she was like, they kind of like changed her mind about it. She was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't think we should do this anymore. And I was like, okay, let's make cool new stuff. I'm so down,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm glad that we did that. And I've seen that with a lot of other artists too, where it's like there was this kind of initial wave where a lot of people were using AI content. And then there was like some pushback from the community and people like, and just conversations too. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of artists who started using it early on didn't really understand like the negative impact that it
Mm.
could have. So I think a lot of important conversations have been taking place between the community and these artists over the last couple of years, to where the artists are like, yeah, you know what, like, just like I want people to support me as a real artist, I want to support a real artist too. You know what I mean? Like, I think especially coming from that perspective as an artist, they're like, you know, art should be made by humans. Like, yeah, so I think
Yeah.
that's like the general consensus of most artists, is art
Yeah.
should be made by humans. And then the AI art, that it's obviously still kind of made by humans, but it's really just relative to the amount of effort that you put in to make something unique. Whether I feel like you can consider yourself to have made it to some degree, you
Totally.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, I think there's so much we could chew on that for sure. Like I have
oh
tons
yeah.
of thoughts but I am curious, kind of almost going back to the sphere question. Like, if somebody were to give you like $1 billion and they were like, hey, you can make like whatever crazy ass like visual immersive experience that you want, like what would you do with that? You have some unlimited budget. It can be, it can be working with a DJ, I guess, if you want to, or you can create like your own thing, like what would you make?
That's a really good question. I would probably make like the most psychedelic experience of all time. It's kind of like, and I probably wouldn't like make it all myself. It would be, I would like curate the experience and like bring in like a lot of other super high power. Like with $1 billion, I'm definitely not keeping that $1 billion. Like I'm hiring a whole team of people to like, I'm just going to creative direct at that point. If I have $1 billion, like maybe I'll like contribute in some ways to certain pieces, but like with that kind of budget, I'm gonna like, I would go and hire like all my favorite artists who I think could make all the coolest stuff, and then figure out how to tie it together into a cohesive experience that could drive home some kind of message. Um, that's how I would approach that. If anyone wants to give me $1 billion, I'm so down. I honestly, I don't know what I would do with $1 billion. I'd be a little overwhelmed. Maybe 1 million. Even 1 million, I'd be like, oh man, how am I going to actually spend this $1 million? Like effectively, but I mean, something for the Sphere does kind of take that much, is like those renders are crazy and they're long and they all have to kind of tie it together. So like you do need a massive budget for the Sphere, but yeah, that's how I do it. I'd bring on all my friends who are awesome and have them all make super sick stuff. And then I would build the show and I would have other people make all the assets probably.
Would you imagine that's like something that like people can like walk through? So it's like, it's almost like an environment that like your people can just enter and leave? Or did you imagine it being more something that people like sitting down and experiencing? Like, how would you kind of imagine that playing out?
Well, with the Sphere, I would imagine it being like a sit down like experience, because I think that's what works the best in there, And if have you ever seen like Android Jones, Sam Scara?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, like that's kind of, I feel like, the best example of like what I would try to do, except instead of having it be all Android Jones, I would Android Jones would be in it for sure, but like there would be like a whole bunch of different artists I would hire, like, because I just know so many people who are incredibly talented who could crush something like that, who, and maybe I would make like one piece for it, or like there'd be like one or two that I'd be heavily involved in. But when it comes to building a whole show like that big, and having a budget like that, I would need like 5 years where I'm not doing anything else, like maybe longer, like that would have to be like really like, I mean, $1 billion, I'll spend the rest of my life on this show, like, oh, this is my job forever. Okay. But,
That's bad.
yeah, but yeah. And also, I mean, that's not how it works in the music industry. They'd be like, you have $1 billion in like 3 months. And I'd be like, whoa, like, okay.
Hire all the VJs.
Yeah, exactly. I'm making phone calls immediately, It would be tough. So, hopefully they give you more than that, but more time. But yeah, that's how I would approach it. It's funny you asked that question, because I've gotten to, I actually have started to create like my own experiences to a degree, not really like that, but, and this actually, I meant to bring this up earlier when you talked about like ways the industry could change type thing. And, I'm doing this thing and I'm testing the waters with the idea here in Denver, because it's the only place I feel like where something like this could be successful at this point in time. But basically, I'm throwing visual centric shows with a secret music lineup and seeing how many people will come. And the first one went really good. So last year, this venue in Denver, Cervantes Other Side, gave me the opportunity to do this. It's like a 600 person room or something. And I booked a whole VJ lineup, and I booked a whole DJ lineup, and I made a custom projection map stage, and I projection mapped a couple pieces to go around the room too, to just like make it a cool, unique type event. And we announced the show initially with just me and secret lineup, and then we added the support VJs and like some painters and like kind of like, and I made a whole 3D render of the stage with lasers and everything, and like made like a little reel that showed like kind of what the show is going to be like. And we ended up selling it out before doors. So it was actually really successful. And this year they're letting me do it again in the ballroom, which is like a 1,200 cap room. So it's like twice as big, and I'm doing it as a co-headline with my friend Glass Crane, who's another amazing visual artist. And we're doing Actual Crane, which is actualizing Glass Crane, Actual Crane. And and it's going to be a really cool show. It's like basically we're going to book the same thing. We're going to book some VJs, and then all the DJs will be a secret. And you don't know who's going to play until they walk on stage the day of the show, which is cool. Yeah, like makes it really fun and exciting. You're like going to a show, you don't even know who's playing. You just know it's going to be cool, you know, like, and that's kind of like the approach that I took. And so far it's been working really well. And it was kind of just like, I initially did it. I didn't know if it was going to work. You know, I was like, I'm going to try this because one of the things that's really tough for VJs that I've realized over the years, and it's a little different now because what I do is, less like announced, actualized stuff, and I'm like working on the back end of artists. Like I essentially am part of Zingara and Clozee and Daily Bread, as opposed to being like a collaboration between actualized and those artists. Like I'm like part of their experience in their group, which is like most of the work I do now. But for a long time, it was a lot of things where it's like actualized is its own brand, and this is like a collaboration between these two artists where I'm gonna like play what I want, you know, and I'm going to like come up with the experience. And so this show kind of like brings it back to that. And also like when you're doing those paired sets where it's like, you know, an artist is playing at a venue and they announce that there's going to be a VJ playing with them. It's always been really hard to gauge like what kind of impact that has on ticket sales. And like, so for example, like all the way the music industry works for DJs is everything's based on hard ticket sales, which like hard ticket sales are essentially like when you are the primary draw to the event, you're the main reason people are buying tickets. So like if you're a supporting act, that's not hard ticket sales. They call that soft ticket sales. Or if you're like playing even at like Electric Forest or some major festival where like people are going to go anyways, you know, like those are like soft ticket sales. So the concept of having hard ticket sales and showing that your name and your brand can sell tickets is a really important part of like negotiations on the back end of the music industry for artists as they grow. You know, they say like, all right, they're negotiating with the promoters as like, here's how many tickets we can sell in this market based on our history here. So this is how much money we want to be paid based on that. And so my initial idea with the show was to be able to prove that we can do hard ticket sales, you know, like prove that people care enough about the visuals that they'll go to a show purely for the visuals, not knowing what the rest of the experience is. And we were able to prove that people are into that. And so in terms of where I see things going and changing, I could definitely see more events that are focused on the visual aspect of the show than the music, you know? And I think that the Sphere is kind of an example of that too. You know, it's like the artists who are playing the Sphere, it's like, yeah, people are going to see those artists, but they're paying crazy prices and they're traveling from all over to see the Sphere, you know, like they're going to see the show at the Sphere. And like the artists are helping to sell the tickets, obviously, but like people are going for the visual experience there. And so I think there's more and more of that will happen as people realize that it's such a like big part of what people go to these events for now is like, you know, for the show. It's not like just for the music, you know, like it's for the whole show. And so I could see that becoming more prominent like in marketing, and I could see like more visual artists like being announced on flyers. You can already kind of start to see it this year, you know, with like Nocturnal and Resonate and like certain events. Now that like Tipper is gone and over, a lot of those VJs and artists who existed in that space are kind of branching out into other spaces now. And And there's promoters who are throwing these events who like understand that those artists have been getting put on by that community for so long that they do have the ability to sell tickets, even if they can't prove it. Like there's promoters who understand the value. And so I think that that's one of the things that I can see starting to change a little bit, is just like the value and respect for the visual component of the show, which is great.
And what strikes me too about even what you said with the shows that you're doing, where you're doing, the traditional visuals, but you're also doing projection mapping and creating other things in other areas, right? Like it changes the tone of the experience when it is sort of, if it's music driven or if it's visual driven, right? Because it's like, cool, well, here's the visuals that we're going to do. And like, you might be, if it's music driven, well, you want all of the focus still towards the DJ in some way, shape, or form, right? So towards that stuff. Where if it's visual driven, you can have somebody like creating an intentional, I'm just going to call it a distraction, but like, an intentional focus point over here, and then bring them around over here, and then wanting them to do that stuff over, you know what I mean? Like you can create a different type of an experience than you can if it's musically driven. One of my favorite things to go do when they do it like every other year, I want to say, at like Base Canyon, where they'll have this like little igloo that you can go into, and it's a visual experience that they created, that's, I would say, visual driven, but still music in, part of it. And you lay on your back, and they often do this like weird focus trick thing where it's like they'll like have like some sort of like little orb, and it'll start to dance around and kind of like draw your attention. Then it starts to pull you in somewhere, and then it just takes you on this journey that is so cool through time and space and dimensionlessness and just all this stuff. And it's like, wow, like what you can do with something like that. And then I'm a big believer that I think like one of the things that we need in our lives more, because our little aquariums that we build for ourselves now are so awesome, because we have basically a movie theater in our home, and we have there's like no reason to leave our home anymore. That we need things outside of our home that make us want to go outside and play and connect. And like, you don't really want to go out to bars anymore in the same way that they used to, or like go out to clubs traditionally, but like, can we create these like, visual art experiences that are like, oh yeah, let's go down to like this place again today and like connect with other adults and be silly in this crazy visual experience. There's a really cool place I went to down in Portland that was, I don't know if you ever went to like Discovery Zone as a kid. It's like a place with like ball pit and like all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So it was like that, but for adults and like more art driven. But they literally had like an LED light up ball pit that you could get into, and it was like
sick.
So cool.
That's so sick.
All this really cool stuff where it was like, as an adult, I just felt like I could go play, and it's like creating more things like that like I can just spend $20 on to go and hang out at for the day or whatever it might be. Like we need more of those things. And so it sounds like you're almost on the cusp of like creating that kind of thing. So that would be super cool to see how that evolves for sure. And if I'm in Denver, I definitely got to come check out a show.
Yeah, I would love that. The show's this year on May 28th. So it's in like 2 months, which is crazy.
Okay.
So it's still a ton of work to do, but we'll get it done. But yeah, I think also, like, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that you're right. I've never thought about it like that either, where it's like, yeah, like who wants to leave your house when you've got like 5.1 surround sound and a 60-inch 4K OLED TV in your living room, and like infinite things you can watch, like it definitely, like, you have to kind of raise the bar for what an experience outside of your house is, like, totally. And I think that like, it's totally possible now with like the technology that we have. And like another example of a great place like that is Meow Wolf. Have you ever been to Meow Wolf?
100%. Yep.
Yeah. So like they're doing the same thing where they're like, this is just gonna be a really cool art thing, and you're gonna love it. And and it works. Some people are like, yeah, this is sick. Bring your whole family to Meow Wolf. Like there's people who like, there's all sorts of people in Meow Wolf, and I don't think. And I think that's also the cool part about visuals as opposed to music is, and I mean, I guess it depends on the kind of music, but it's easier to make like a visual experience that's broadly appealing, I feel like, than it is to make like a musical experience that's broadly appealing. You know, like I feel like a lot of the visuals that we do at some of these electronic music shows, like there are probably people who don't listen to the music who would appreciate the visual. You know, like they might think the visual is really cool, even though they don't necessarily like the music. And so like I think that's why spaces like Meow Wolf are really cool, because it's like,
Yeah.
you know, like there's nothing keeping you from going there. Like it's not like, it's just something that's really cool that everybody can enjoy, that's still like psychedelic, but not like
Mhm.
so intense that like your average person can't like handle it. You know, like
Totally.
um so I think spaces like that are really cool to create like a bridge. And I'd also like long term, I'd love to either be a part of a space like Meow Wolf or like create my own space like Meow Wolf.
Yeah.
Because projection mapping, which I know we haven't really talked about yet, but projection mapping is like a huge part of what I do. Or I mean, it's not so much what I do now, but like it's a huge part of like what inspired me to get into this. And I still do a few events every year where I get to like do something really cool with projection mapping. Like I actually have projection mapped at Meow Wolf like a handful of times here in Denver when they do their transportation events. I get to projection map in there. There's a couple festivals where I've gotten to like design stages that are projection mapped and run them. Astronauts in October is like the longest standing one that I've been doing for like 4 or 5 years. And we built this really cool stage. It looks like an astronaut helmet with like these hands and like designs around it. And it's got like outlines going around all of it. Like it is sick. It's really, really cool. And I just love projection mapping, because the things you can do with projection mapping especially are like nothing that anyone's ever seen before. You know, like that is also like another art form that's, I feel like totally untapped, which is why it's like super attractive to me, because there's so much that can be done that still hasn't been done, you know.
Yeah.
And like people's minds are blown when they see it. There's still like probably half the population's never even seen projection mapping, you know. Like there's so many people who still don't even really know what it is.
Yeah. Well, or have seen it happen and don't really know that that's like a term, right? It's like you can see something like on somebody's house, or you can see something in a cool way and you're like, oh, that's cool. But like, oh, this is a thing. And I think even the only way that I'm familiar with the term recently is it was, you know, it's one of the synchronistic things that was showing up in my feed. There's like, oh, you can buy this little projection mapper and like projection map onto your couch or to your cube or whatever it is, you know.
Yep.
Have these cool little things. And that definitely got my brain going around like, oh, could you create this like, you know, visual immersive thing and like create a cool party with all this stuff or whatever it might be, you know?
Yeah. There's so much cool stuff you can do. Like you can like take a painting and just bring it to life with a projector. Like,
Wow.
It's so cool. Like that's one of the first things that I did like here in Denver that I feel like another reason why I love living in Denver, which also we haven't really talked about yet. I live in Denver. And but I love it because one, because of the music industry out here is awesome. You know, there's so much cool music coming through all the time. And then two, the psychedelic art community and the art community in general out here is so strong. Like there's hundreds of artists who have dedicated their lives to like creating incredible visionary like psychedelic art that you know is so dialed. And so I've gotten to like, when I first moved here, I got in with that community initially because I mean, one, because I love what they do, and then two, because like I could contribute with this projection mapping thing. You know, like I could get in there and take one of their pieces and make it look like they'd never seen it before. Like completely like transform the image and like bring out certain elements. Like you could like you can even like create intentional experiences with projection mapping where you like highlight certain portions of an image to just tell a story through like where your attention is focused, you know, to like, you know, be like, this is where the story starts and then this is what happens and then there's that. And you can kind of like, you know, guide the viewer through how they should be looking at something, you know, in the most simple form of projection mapping. But then you can also like, you can make something blink or, you know, like there's just so much cool stuff you can do. Like I could go on about projection mapping for a long time too. There's like also at the highest level, there's people in Europe, especially, they do this a ton, and they do it here sometimes in the US, but not as much, where like you'll literally like get a 3D model of a building Have you ever seen this? And they like projection map like a cathedral, and they have like a 3D model of it, and they can make it look like it's crumbling or like glowing through the lights, or like, like
So
that's
cool.
like the ultimate like projection mapping. I've never gotten to do a project like that, but that's like,
Yeah.
I really hope I get to one day, because it's
Yeah.
pretty
I'm
cool.
sure.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
No, it's super cool. I'm curious, like, we've obviously kind of talked a lot about your journey and all these different pieces. And I know, one of the things for you is like really wanting to inspire other people kind of into this phase. So, like, if somebody like is listening to this episode and they're like, man, I really want to be a VJ, I want to get started in this or in visuals or lasers or some other way to contribute to this space, like, what's like your advice to them? Like, where do they get started with all of this?
Yeah. Now there are so many good resources for learning this stuff. Like 10 years ago, I had to figure this out on my own. I download the software. I was like, what does this button do? But now it's like you can go on YouTube and you can search like how to VJ in Resolume, and there's like they can get you started with the basics. And once you get in there, you'll just get inspired more and more as you realize like how powerful it is and what you can really do with it. And so there's tons of YouTube tutorials. I also do private lessons that, if anybody ever wanted to like learn from me directly, they could sign up on my website. So I like to help people in that way too. For lighting or lasers, I don't really know, but I bet there's tutorials for that too. I know that there's a lot of tutorials, and there's a lot of people who are in the space who like, if they see that you're passionate about it, they will teach you everything they know. If you're like passionate and just show appreciation for what somebody does, and they can see that you really love it, and I think that is all it takes for somebody to be like, I'm going to teach you because you should know how to do this because you're going to love it, and I try to find people like that. That's why I love doing the private lessons too, because you just get to connect with somebody who has like the same passion as you, and so if you want to learn how to do lights or lasers, I would recommend walking up to a lighting guy at a show and being like, that was sick, dude. Like, if you actually thought it was sick, but just being like, that was so cool. Like, how'd you do that? How do you get into this? Like, could you teach me? Could I ever like shadow you at a show or something? And I think like if you approach that with like the right intention and like, and like show true and genuine respect and appreciation to somebody who has those kind of like abilities, like they'll happily teach you how to do it because, we love this stuff. Like we would happily and gladly talk about it all day, every day. And we love to see it like, for me, I love to see it like click in somebody's brain when they're like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, so you can do it like that. Oh, I love having those moments where just like their brain expands. Like you teach them one little trick and they're like, wait, so I could do like, oh my gosh, like I know. And it's just so cool to be able to like
So sick.
inspire somebody and teach somebody a new tool. And then like, and it's funny because I feel like there are two sides of that coin too, to the sharing knowledge thing. And I feel like sometimes there are people who are a little defensive with that knowledge, which I've encountered before.
Hide it, gatekeep it kind of thing, or
Right. I mean, they like consider like it to be like, I mean, they're just like scared of losing their careers or their jobs or whatever, and like they're like scared of people coming and taking from them. And so they don't want to like, they kind of gatekeep the knowledge. They don't want people to know. I don't think there's as much of that these days because there's just more and more opportunity to do it. I feel like maybe like 10 years ago, there's like not very much opportunity. So people were like a little more like secretive with their knowledge, but generally I feel like that's changed. And I think like, one of my favorite things that, I can't remember exactly how the quote goes, but in terms of sharing knowledge, it's like, you never know, like, whether, like, you could unlock the key for someone to, like, make your favorite thing. Like, you could, like, and that's not the specific quote, but you know what I mean? Like, it's like somebody could make, like, like, they could end up making, like, your favorite thing that you've ever seen, just from like sharing a little bit of knowledge and something that also inspires you in return. Like it's a cyclical thing, where like sometimes I'll teach somebody something and they do something with it that I never would have thought of. And I'm like, whoa, that's cool. Can I do that? And they're like, yeah, of course. Like, yeah, you taught me. So yeah, you can do this. And so there's a lot of good that can happen with sharing knowledge and learning from people. And I've really enjoyed, like, over the last couple of years, I've had, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent again a little bit, but over the last 2 years, I've been getting to the point where I'm like so busy that like I can't do everything that people want me to do in terms of shows. Like, so sometimes I'll be like out in another city with one of my primary artists, and somebody in Denver will like ask me to like do this show that's like really big for them. Like, because there's a lot of artists that don't have touring VJs who are kind of like on their way to that, who hire me for their big shows in Denver, like only, like, and if I'm at an event they're going to be at, maybe they'll hire me too, but like they can't necessarily afford to pay a production person for every show. So there's a lot of opportunities that come in for me that are just like at Red Rocks or Mission Ballroom, where this person wants to make a big impact with this set specifically. And more recently I've had like overlapping things like that, like conflicts, and I've been working on training people to operate my sets like for me, where I like straight up give them like my entire show file and show them how it all works. And I have like 2 guys right now who I like trust with that show file, because like there is some stuff in there where I'm like, this is my special sauce, like I don't like it's certain things you ask me how to do it, I'll be like, well, let's hang out first before I tell you how to do all my secret stuff, like, but like these 2 guys have it, and it's been just awesome working with them, and they've leveled up individually on their own too, just from having access to that and being able to dig through it and see, how it works. And it's just been so cool to work with somebody and be able to share that knowledge. And it just feels good. I feel like probably one day I will teach this stuff, like as a career, when I'm too old to tour, like I just want to hang out at home. I'm going to like go get a job at a university teaching visuals or something like that. Like I feel like a long-term goal. I feel like that would be a good place to end up, because like it is one of the most fulfilling things to be able to share your passion with somebody who it really clicks with, and who like really benefits from it in such a important way. So I just love that. That's awesome. I really love being able to share and teach. Yeah.
Is there a like specific mentor or teacher or someone in your journey who like kind of was that for you?
Not for VJing, but for content creation, yes. So like when it comes to the VJing, I really just had to learn on my own, because I didn't know anybody. I did meet like one other VJ early on who like kind of helped me figure out some stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily consider him like a mentor. Whereas like with this 3D stuff, Glass Crane, who I told you I'm doing this show with at Cervantes, he has been my mentor in 3D for the last like 3 or 4 years. And he really like pushed me to get into it. Like I never would have even really like tried to learn it on my own, but he kind of was like, you can do this. He's like, I'm going to teach you. He's like, don't worry, like we'll figure it out. And for a long time I was like, oh man, but like you're just so good and everybody else is already so good. What's even the point? Like I'm never going to be able to get, like I had a lot of mental blockage when it came to like creating my own 3D visuals for a long time, just because there's so many people who are so good at it, and I felt like I could never catch up. But like what I eventually realized is like you don't have to, like, it's not necessarily about how much knowledge you have when it comes to these 3D programs, like it's just about, and when it comes to anything, even like any art form, whether it's painting or Photoshop or, digital sculpting or anything, like you don't need to know every single tool. Even if you just know the basics, if you use them tastefully, you can create something incredible, like, so like, I don't know how to do like every single thing in 3D, but like, I know how to do enough that I can make a visual that's impactful, and looks good, you know? And so that really helped me to get past that. And I slowly learn more and more as time goes on, you know, just naturally as I want to do different things. But I think that's also a thing that can be really inspiring for people going into any new art form. Is it's like, you don't have to like know, like you can still make art that is valid without knowing every single technique or being like a master. Like you can still make stuff that can make an impact just by like the idea of what you're making, you know, or it's not so much about like knowing everything about how to do it. You know, obviously that helps, but like if you know enough, you can create what you want to create, and then you're just going to grow from there. And so I think that's a really I think it's a barrier for a lot of people to getting into a new art form. Just like, it's like you're going to suck at it at first. And that's just like part of it. Like you're kind of going to suck. You're not going to know what you're doing. You're going to feel like, I don't know how to do this. But one of the most inspiring things for me is like just focusing on learning the basics, the point where you understand, and then making the coolest thing you can with just the basics, and then kind of going from there and just like working on adding new elements to make it just a little more, you know, like, but like I've seen people make stuff who had no idea. Like for a good example is like, I did this digital sculpting class once at Cosm. Do you know what Cosm is? So do you know who Alex Gray is?
Yeah.
So Alex Gray has like this place called Cosm, and it's like basically like his house, but it's it stands for the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, and it's like an art.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's like that. Okay, yeah. So it's like an art gallery type place, and they do sometimes these workshops there. And so I attended this workshop like a couple years back, which was actually one of the first places I met Stephen Glass Crane, and it was a digital sculpting workshop, which I had no idea. Like, I'd never made anything in 3D in my life, but I was just like, oh my God, Ben Ridgway is doing a digital sculpting workshop. Who, like, I don't know if you know Ben Ridgway, but he's also just an incredible artist. I was like, I need to go to this. It was like a couple hours from my house, and I had software money at the time. I was like, you know, we're doing this. So, so I went there, and Alex Gray, you know, who's like obviously never made like anything 3D in his life, he started learning digital sculpting, and like within a day he was making like just like, you know, like realistic human face out of like 3D putty, you know. And it's not because he is good with computers, you know. It's just because like he knows what looks good. And I think that like that's one of the first things that makes you want to become an artist, is like realizing that like you know what looks good. Like you after seeing so much art and just like really studying it, you're like, this is what I like about this, and this is what I don't like. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier. Like when I watch a set, the same thing when I look at an art piece, I'm like, what do I like about this and what don't I like about it? And like, how can I integrate that into what I do? And so enough time spent thinking like that is really like the most important thing, I feel like, as opposed to like, you know, mastering every technique, you know, which comes with time, but like you can still make incredible art from the very beginning just by having like a clear vision of what you want to make, you know, like, and knowing when it looks good and when it doesn't look good. And like, for example, like Zingara, Gabrielle, like for this content package, she drew all these things on Procreate. She'd never done it before, once in her life. And like, they are so sick. Like, did you see the chapel? Like the cathedral ceiling thing? Dude, like, she's never drawn, you know, like, but she knows. She's just like, she pays attention, you know, and she has a very clear vision. So like without any prior experience, she's already making really cool stuff. And once she has been doing that for like a couple of years, it's just going to get better and better naturally. But from the very beginning, because she just had a clear vision, you know, like she could create something that's people want to look at, you know, and I think it's just so important to remember that like all art is valid, really, you know, like except for maybe AR, but like all art that's made by a human, you know, like even if you just started painting today and you paint something, like that is a valid expression of your experience and your humanity, and it is uniquely you, you know, like, and I think that like that's what art is really about. It's not about like, you know, being the best, you know, it's not about like mastering everything, you know, like if you get there eventually because of persistence and eventually, you know, that's awesome, but like that's not what it's about, you know, like it's about sharing the human experience, you know, like sharing your perspective of what you think is beautiful in the world, you know, and like so that's really all you need to get started, is just like a unique perspective, which we all have, whether we realize it or not. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, Dave, this has been a fantastic conversation. There's just one question I always ask my guests at the end of the episode, which is, you know, what's one question that you might have for the audience that might shift their perspective or have them think about something in a different way?
Huh. I wish you told me that one earlier. But just kidding. But yeah, I mean, I think if there's like anyone who is like a lot of what we were just talking about, you know, if there's anyone out there who is like struggling with like not knowing what their path is or feeling like they're lost, you know, and they just feel like what they're doing with their life is not meaningful or impactful, I would just, I guess, say to them that like you can change your life whenever you want, you know, like, and it might not be easy, you know, like there's a lot of work involved, you know, like there's a lot of sacrifice and loss sometimes, but if you persevere, you know, like you can make your life into whatever you want it to be, you know, and I get reminded of that like all the time because of all these artists I work with and the things that I see. But like, I feel like a lot of people don't think like that. A lot of people feel stuck, you know, and I know what that feels like. And I also know that it's possible to get unstuck, you know, like I've gone through it myself. I've seen so many people go through it, you know, working in the music industry, see people like find their passion and grow and like become like happy in a way that like they never were able to before, by feeling like, you know, with art, it's a, like I said, it's a unique expression. You really get to be yourself and you have fun, you know, like I think I would just encourage anybody who feels stuck or lost to try something new, you know, like give it a shot, like get out there and try something you never tried before and see what happens. And, you know, like try to learn something new, try to paint, you know, like try to VJ, try to go in Photoshop and make something cool, you know, like there's so many things you can do to like find your art. And I do feel also like everybody has like a unique and important creative expression inside them, and they just need to find their medium to be able to express that properly. And so it's all about just like not giving up until you find it, you know, like, and believing that you can find it and you'll get there. And yeah, I think that's my parting note.
Awesome. Well, Dave, this has been awesome. Super pleasure to have you on. Anywhere you want to send people before we sign off?
If you want to follow me on Instagram, my tag is actualized visuals. That's where I post primarily, although I don't post enough. You know, that's where you can follow me. I also have a website, actualizedvisuals.com, where you can go see some of my stuff. I have a couple like mixes on YouTube you can check out. And if you live in Denver, please come to my show on May 28th.
Yeah,
It's
beautiful.
going to be really cool. So,
Well, thanks, Dave. This has been super fun, and we'll have to do it again in the future.
absolutely, man. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been a blast, Cameron. I really appreciate your unique perspective, and it's been just a really great conversation. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk about what I'm passionate about.